Hello, welcome to the June 14th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we will begin. Bear with me just for a second. Hello, welcome to the June. All right, my audio monitoring computer sounds fine. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply ask a question in the live chat field. When asking questions, if you could specify which operating system your software is working with. Also, if you could indicate which version of Cubase, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro. And also, if it's like version 11, version 12, 10, 10.5, that information would be helpful. I will not have the ability to answer all the questions in real time. So if you ask a question and enter it in the chat field and don't see an immediate response, we will go through chronologically in order that the questions were asked. And so asking the same question just kind of slows down the whole process for everyone involved. So as we work with that, if we could try to avoid, asking the same question multiple times, it doesn't increase the time in which your question will get a response. But I'll try my best throughout the live stream to catch up to all of the questions. If as we're working with this, we should have all of the topics covered in today's live stream indexed this evening with timestamps, and that will be pinned to the top of the comments field in the video, so you could watch the video afterwards as well. And if you wanted to search for comments that have been asked in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm is kind enough to create that website for us. So it's a great resource, and you could search. I think there's over 18,000 topics that we've covered in live streams and in the live streams since the pandemic started. So it's a wonderful resource. I also want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude. I just saw that Agent K won't be able to make the live streams this week, but they serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. So they just do this for the betterment of the community. So we're going to give a special thanks to them. And another wonderful resource of information that I always like to point out is the Cubase Nation Discord channel, and Jazz Dude does a lot of work compiling information and relevant tutorials for the Steinberg community there. All right, so let's go ahead. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we see. So we have Walter Blackledge checking in from the St. Louis Club Cubase. We hope you're doing well, Walter. Thanks for joining us. All right. Okay, so we have a question. So it says, hi, Greg. If a group channel is assigned to a VCA which has automation, but the group channel does not, why does clicking on the volume line of the group channel reset it? Is there a workaround? All right, so let's go ahead and set up a scenario here. I'll just open up a quick project and we'll do some routing to groups and VCAs. All right, so if I wanted to take all of these tracks and route them to a group, all I need to do is to right click and we'll assign group channels to the selected. And now I want to select all the channels and the group and send them to a VCA fader. Okay, so now I'll just not add to VCA fader. Sorry about that. And we'll select these and let's add a VCA fader to the selected channels. Okay, so now we have our VCA. So let's say all of my drums, I wanted to automate the VCA. All right, so let's say so just come here and let's just rewind. We'll see our automation coming up here. Okay, so the question is, so we have, okay, so if a group channel is assigned to a VCA which has automation for the group channel doesn't, but the group channel doesn't, why does clicking on the volume line of the group channel reset it? Is there a workaround? So let's say if I click, I'm not sure if the volume line is here. So, if we, so we see our volume line, I'm not sure if it's the automation line, but if I change that, we could see that as we change the group, it will get reset. But let's see if we now include that because there wasn't automation before. So let's say as we bring our group up and we'll see our automation. So we'll see our VCA automation. So I guess if there's no automation currently in the group, then it's assuming the automation here from the VCA because we haven't combined the automation. But if there is, let's say if we open up automation and we see that for all of the tracks, even though there's no automation. So when we automate a VCA, what we're actually doing is, we have the automation data there, but it could coalesce with existing automation. So if we don't have automation, it's not going to show up. But as soon as we have automation, we could now see that the VCA would still take into account. So we'll see that the group channel will, the volume, its automation will automatically still not do necessarily a straight line, but will be affected by the actual by the automation of the VCA itself. So you'll see kind of the line here because there is no automation on that group channel except for the VCA. And then once you have automation on the VCA on the group channel and it's routed to the VCA, we will notice that it doesn't do just a straight fade out. That we do this, we'll see our group fader here, not doing a linear fade out, but responding to this curve with the additional information of the VCA. So hope that makes sense. But if I misunderstood, just let me know, Alex. Hang on just 1 second. Sorry about that. My son is home for summer and he has a friend coming over for a play date. So they're getting it coordinated while I'm on the live stream. So, all right. So we see Benny checking in. We also have Michael Marshall from Somerset, UK. All right. So we have, all right. Mike Chatfield just jumped on me. All right, we have Samson Strike checking in from Austria. We have Jason Genova from Suffolk, England. Is it Ishank Gaming from, it says Indian is here. We have Jan from Stockholm for Cubase Index. Captain Energy Music from Pennsylvania. Robbie Bowling from Dallas. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Enabling disabled contact instances takes a very long time and sometimes completely freezes Cubase to death. Is there a solution? I'm using latest Cubase and contact versions. So if you're not familiar with this concept, if you have like instruments that take a lot of memory or processing power, At this point, it could be that, you could choose to disable tracks. So as soon as we come here, we could disable that track and that would unload it from processing and memory. But if we wanted to come over here, we could just choose to enable the track. So once it's enabled, it might be that the project, those instruments, if they take a long time, that's just how long those sounds take to load into that particular instrument. So, and it could be maybe that when it's being loaded into a particular instrument, maybe that those sounds are taking up a lot of CPU resources. So the length of that and the processing change isn't really kind of done by Cubase, but it's the kind of the consequences of running that particular instrument CPU and power wise. So I don't think there's anything in Cubase to fix with that, but it's just kind of turning on what you're telling it to and enabling the contact library. So maybe if, there's a ability to, if you have that particular instrument or tracks, that are not spread across, I don't know if you've have contact, if you have it set to spread across CPU cores, if it does that, or how it's dealing with the memory for how much it loads up, beforehand or afterhand. But those things can make a difference in the instrument, but it's nothing really to do with Cubase. It's just, you're just telling Cubase to use that particular plugin, and then you're just taking those power that plugin is being told to use into the project. So maybe if you see if you do it with a smaller sound to see if you get the same instance or versus a large orchestral type of project. All right, so we see question. Hello, Greg. Why is it that I cannot access audio files from the media bay to the right? Instead, I have to go to my Finders folder on my MacBook Pro. Is this a re-indexing issue? All right, so when we come over here, and I go to my media, at this point, all of my loops and samples, will just show up directly here. So if I wanted to just audition. So if you're not seeing any content here, I would maybe go to the large media bay. So if you go to media bay or hit F5 and you just wanted to make sure that, when you go to VST sound that you could right click and, you could go through each of these folders and make sure that you don't have, first of all, just on the left-hand side that you have it unchecked. But you may have to just kind of right click and rescan disks for all those different files. And you could do this kind of at the operating system as well. So you may have to, if you don't see it, any sound files show up here. So say, okay, I was just looking for all of my media files. If they're not showing up in the big media bay, I would try to select the folder where those files are and right click and rescan, and anything that's available to see here you can see in the right zone media bay. If it's that you don't hear the sounds as you go to preview, that would be probably that you need to go to your audio connections and set the control room output as opposed to the outputs. But let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see question. Hi, Greg. Any possibility to apply global mix console presets? So I think that you could. So let's say if I just come directly to sometimes some of the elements may be more based on the project because each project may have different tracks in it. So, if you have, 8 drum tracks in this project and 10 in another and 3 in another. So sometimes the mix console may be kind of set that way. But let's say if I wanted to come here and I wanted to save all of my drums as a particular preset, I think I could come and let's go to this little drop down menu here just to the left of the word racks. And let's save selected channels. So at this point, we'll just call it drum mix June 14th. All right, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. I'll go to a new project. We'll create empty. All right, so let's say I'll select those. Let's go into my mix console. And let's load selected channels. And let me just... All right. So now that we've done that, we've just automatically, and so we've taken this from a different project and automatically loaded it in. So try just to go, all right, well, don't know why Microsoft Outlook wants to verify, but so if we just go to the left here, just try selecting the channels, saving the selected channels and loading the selected channels back to other projects, and you should be able to have kind of global mix console snapshots like that. So let me know if that will work. All right, so we have Panos Anastasio from Greece checking in. Thanks for joining us today. All right, and we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. We have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. All right, we see Kerwin Young from Atlanta. Thanks for joining us today. And John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, we see Nick. All right. All right, so it says, Greg, I managed to change the view of regions in my project window from the default 3D looking preference to flat, like what you're displaying now. How do I change it back? So it's probably just going to be, if you go, if you did it probably in preferences. So let's come over here to our Cubase preferences, and we go to, we may be under like users, we can go to our user interface, maybe. So it's probably going to be in the color schemes here. And if you wanted to, you could just, in any of the preferences that you select, you could just click on defaults, and that should send it back to the default view. So that should be all you need to do to restore that. So let me know if that works. All right, so we have Oxy Vandenberg checking in from Holland. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. Okay, so we have a question to reinstall Cubase Pro 11. What steps do I take? Just checking before I cause myself a problem. Thanks. So, once you, if you just go through, I'm not sure if you're running on Mac or Windows, but, either way on Mac, you could just drag the the application to trash, or on Windows, uninstall. And then at that point, just reinstall, and you could download it from the Steinberg Library Manager is where the install file would be, or you could search for the Cubase 11 install. It's very straightforward to do that. So it's hard to get a problem with that. All right, so we see Uno Momento on the live stream. So thanks for joining us. And if you do learn something new, make sure that you actually do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. All right, we have Matt Elston checking in from London. Thanks for joining us. Nick is saying this like button won't smash itself. All right. We have John Shaman. Hi to you as well. All right. All right, so we have a question. Forgive my laziness. In folder channel structure, is it possible to cycle through folders and then stop and expand, then collapse and cycle to other folders, etc.? So really all you have to do is, I'll just go ahead and duplicate this a couple of times just to kind of show this point. Okay, so there is, if you go to project, I think that there's a track folding that you could just toggle selected track. And if you wanted that to be like a function on your controller, so let's say I just have my little Korg Nano control here. So if I wanted to assign this function, I will come here and we'll say so I'll just look up folding. Okay, so say folding, toggle, selected track, and I'll apply the mapping. So now as soon as I, come right over here, I could just hit this particular button. And anytime I'm on a folder track, you could assign just a button or assign a keyboard shortcut through that. So any folder that you're on, you could just kind of come over here and set a key command to do that. And then you could, navigate down folders depending what your, so if you wanted to just, navigate down, you could do that and then just kind of grab that one particular function to expand or close folders. So just assign that through generic remote or keyboard shortcut as well. All right, so I have HP Singh just saying hi, Greg. So thanks for joining us. And we see Spike Williams joining from a sunny Wales. All right, and we got the Monk Beach joining us as well. Okay, so we have a question. In chord track, is it possible to set steps between each two chords so that chord 1, then put 3 step, then chord 2 comes, then 5 steps, then chord 3 comes? All right, so let me just add a quick chord track here. Okay, so let's say I Okay, so just see, is it possible to set steps between each two chords? So set chord 1, then put 3 step. So I'm not sure if what step is, if it's beat. So you could, come here and place the chord events kind of at whatever that you want. So say we do 3 between those two chords, then we want it to be 5, or if we want it to be 7. So, we could do that, or I'm not sure if it's just the chord definition. So let's say we wanted to go to E flat from C as musical steps, like intervals. And then let's say, okay, I wanted to go, to E flat to B flat for a fifth, like a perfect fifth. So maybe John, if you could just specify if you kind of mean rhythmically or harmonically, that would be helpful. All right, wonderful to see Vinny Sabatino from Orlando. Thanks for joining us. All right. And we have Canadian Fishin' Musician joining us as well. Thanks for being on. Okay, so we see a question from Michael Teams. Question is, for some reason I can't change my destination in the export box, trying to send to a flash drive to transport elsewhere. All right, so let's say if I wanted to take this and let's do an export audio mix down. So we'll see on the path, if you click here, and then at this point, click on choose. And then that should allow you to any, USB flash drive or network drive anywhere on your system. So just once again, from the batch export, come over here, export audio mix down, and in path, go to the little drop down menu and then click choose. And then you could set your path to any folder or any drive on your system. All right, so we just see a question. Hi from Sweden. Sorry if this question has been asked a lot already. The Steinberg CC 121 is no more. Will there be a new version of this in the near future? So nothing has been announced, and I haven't seen any plans on roadmaps for kind of a replacement. Obviously, a lot of people want something, along that vein. There are a number, when we hear about parts shortages and stuff like that, the, CC121 and some of the Steinberg audio interfaces have components that are no longer available or being manufactured. So that's why, we have some of the stuff that was discontinued. A lot of the functionality now you could actually kind of get, using the generic remote. So with the Midi remote in Cubase 12, we have the capability of doing a lot of kind of different functions directly, for any standard Midi controller, so that you can get a lot of CC121 like functions, and you can, configure anything that transmits Midi to do a lot of the functions, including kind of like the AI knob. So, but no plans, nothing to really that we could communicate or talk about as a replacement for it, unfortunately. So I still love my CC121. Yeah, sorry about that. I know it's a bummer. All right, so we see a question. I installed Cubase 12 now. I can't find Loop Mash. Is it no longer available? So Loop Mash and a couple of other plugins are no longer being developed. So Loop Mash was a product that we did. It was developed with a third-party company, and they're no longer developing it, and will not be, able to have it, operational and native for future operating systems and future processors. So it was discontinued as of Cubase 12. If you kind of look online, you may be able to copy a file over from Cubase 11 into Cubase 12 and have it show up and function, but it's not officially supported. So it's that, and I think it was Prologue and Mystic and Spectre, I think, also, aren't moving forward because of development partners we worked with not updating it. But you do have while the Loop Mash VSTI isn't available, the Loop Mash virtual effect is. So, all right. So we have Odavali checking in from Vienna. Thanks for joining us again. All right, so we have, hello, Greg. Tomek here from Poland. Could you please check that on a computer you have with Cubase when you add a MIDI track during project playback, does the project playback stop for a moment? All right, so I'll just come here. So, some of this stuff has been sped up in Cubase 12, but there's a little gap. I think it might have been more in previous versions like Cubase 11, but I think that's not terribly bad. So as you add a MIDI track, when you do this, sometimes when you add plugins, so I'll just do it one more time without talking over it. So that's one of the things that has been sped up in Cubase 12. Sometimes when adding plugins, you may hear like a little bit of a pause while Cubase is resetting to automatically do delay compensation, where programs will have the audio play out of time until you stop and then do delay compensation if it does it. So. Okay, so you see John asking about he has a kind of more of a follow-up from the chord track question. So it just says follow-up from root like middle C, then count 3.5 steps. Then the next chord comes. So just see if we just kind of come here. So if we go up 3 steps, we go to E flat, and while we do this, if at this point we could just have it automatically, we could just set the scale. So if you're starting from E flat, you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or, if you wanted to just simply be able to adjust that way, you could just count while you do that. But, generally a lot of chord progressions don't work that way, but you could kind of get it set up if you wanted to do it manually. So. Okay, so we see from Michael Teams, howdy, Greg. In one of my songs, all my folders, guitar, Vox, keys, etc., have migrated into the drum folder. How do I get them out of there? Okay, so I guess it's probably going to be like a folder track that we see here. All right, let me just close out some MIDI tracks here. I have a MIDI device that's not connected. And maybe looking for. All right, let me just take a. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'll just do. See if we get this to. Not I may just force quit. I'll probably just. Sometimes when I go to MIDI device, I'll just force quit just to make it shorter here. Okay, so if it's on a project window, Michael, to do that, all you would need to do bear with me just a second. Sorry, you may hear my son running above me. Okay, so let's say if we are here, okay, so let's say at this point, if I have like these tracks in a folder, so let's say I'm going to create a new folder. So we'll move selected tracks to new folder. So, and let's say I have this folder that goes inside of another track. So within my folder, I have kind of a nested folder, and let's say we'll call this guitars. Okay, so at this point, all you'd have to do is you could open up kind of the folder that has the subfolders and just simply drag it out. And now we could just say, okay, it's now out of the folder, so that when we close this folder, we can now open this folder. But sometimes people will just come here and, you know, move a folder within a folder. So just kind of, you could drag it above the folder if you wanted to, or below. If it's in the folder, just drag it below the folder, and then it will be out of the folder. So let me know if that's the folder that you're meaning, if it was for track folders, Michael. Okay. All right, so I see all right, so I see from Panos, just says that's the mobile Midi in Cubase 12. I have Cubase 11 Pro, and I'm thinking of upgrade to 12. Okay, so let me know. And I just see also I have many MIDI controllers. Oh, okay, Greg's answering my question now. So, but let me know if there's something that you had a question on, just in case. All right, and we see Mark Rabin from Montana joining us. Great to see you on. All right, so we see a question from Vinny Sabatino. Cubase 12 Pro control room volumes for headphones is not consistent when I engage monitor button and record button. Audio comp button engaged. Any help to make this consistent? Okay, so let's say we come over here to the control room. Okay. Okay, so it just sees the headphones are not consistent. I'm just rereading this. When I engage the monitor button and record button, the audio comp button engaged. My son's having a little too much fun. All right, so so Vinny, if you could let me know what the audio comp is it what the audio comp button is. So, you know, if you have discrepancies in the volume, you know, check to see, one, if you come to and select your audio interface, if you disable direct monitoring, because it could be going through plugins that are affecting the gain. So see if you toggle the status of your direct monitoring, if that changes the behavior, because sometimes you may be auditioning through plugins, and when you do that, that might have an effect. So I guess maybe the audio comp button engages that, maybe the compressor. So if you're going through the mix engine, the compressor might be changing the gain. So try, out of curiosity, to again go to your studio menu, to studio setup, and toggle direct monitoring and see if that changes the behavior for you. All right, so we see Mark Rabin is safe from the floods out in the west. So you see how many MIDI controllers can MIDI remote handle at the same time. I don't think that there's a limit. You could have them all kind of doing different things. There might be a MIDI port limit in Windows or Mac, but you could run a lot of different MIDI controllers simultaneously. So we see, hi Greg, I know you're not allowed to say anything about Halion 7, but could you give us any hint? Unfortunately, no. So I know I could just tell you that the developers are working on it. Is it near release or not? So it's not going to be, I would say that you're okay for a few months, maybe then it might be closer, who knows? But it's nothing that's imminent. And I think that, since it'll be the next generation of, of the program, that it will be on the new licensing. And then, many of the instruments are kind of contingent upon that for the playback engine. So we might see a change at that point for more of the instruments going without, on the new licensing system. But sorry, I can't really comment more than that. All right, so we see, hi Greg, I'm still waiting on a fix for the Groove Agent crash issue I talked about. You're able to reproduce it with a fresh 12.03 installation and a fresh Mac OS 12.4 installation, but doing okay. So I'm not sure, I think if that's with the 80s techno kit or the 80s dance kit. That's not a standard Steinberg library. So, I think that was done by Dom Segalis. So I'm not sure if you've reached out to Dom to see if there's any updates to that particular library. I know it was like a free sound set that he did for a while. But I'm not sure if you've had a chance to reach out to Dom and to see if there's, he does a lot of Cubase videos as well, so you could probably reach out to him there. But I think that was something that he did, so maybe there's an update on his end for the particular library. But as you saw, it doesn't misbehave on my system, so maybe there was an update from Dom's side. All right, so we see from Mark Rabin, what's the best way to update to 12.03? So what you could do is just come over to the Steinberg download assistant. I'm sure everyone could hear my son playing upstairs, running on a floor right above me. He's enjoying his summer. All right, so when you just go to Cubase here, let's say you go to Cubase Pro 12, and then you could just choose to download and install the 12.03, and that's how you can get the update. And you could probably find it, I'm sure you could find it on the Steinberg website as well. But just go to the library assistant, and then you'll see kind of the main program, and then you could just simply update just directly from there. Okay, so we see from Samson Strike says, I heard about GPU processing in DAW on the NAMM show. Nice future. Still overwhelmed by Cubase/Nuendo 12 with all the process optimization. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it works out and deals with latency and all that fun stuff. But it's an exciting time. I know that some of the guys from NVIDIA stopped by the booth, and I put them in touch with my colleagues at Steinberg. All right, so we have Brianna checking in from Youngstown. Thanks for joining us today. Great to see you on the live stream. Okay, so we see question, how do you make the project center full screen? I'm on Windows PC, so if you want it like, let's say if, your project was like this and you wanted to fill the screen, I think it's, just find there's a zoom full command. So you could just click on zoom full and that will kind of fill the screen. And I thought it was like Shift F as the key command for that, but try going to, and you could assign a key command when you go to zoom full. So let me know if that's what you mean, or if you wanted to make the project center zone full screen. So if you don't want to see like what's underneath or to the right, you can just come over here in the upper right-hand corner. So if you say, okay, I want to hide the inspector or hide the lower zone or hide the right zone, you could just see only the particular project window. So if that's the only thing you want to see, so let me know if either of those makes sense. Sorry if I misunderstood. Okay, so you see from Vinny Sabatino, I guess the auto comp is on, so that's the constrained delay compensation. So yeah, but check that, see if you have a difference with the direct monitoring disabled. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay, so I see from Mark Rabin, I can't hear my son, so luckily I don't have a condenser mic. All right, so we see, all right, so we have Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining. He's a loyal attendee. All right, so we just see, can I work with video in Cubase? So yeah, you can just come right over here. And if you wanted to right click, you could just choose to add a video track. So let's come here. If I have a video track, or you could just import a video file or the audio from a video file. Now, Cubase isn't really intended to be a video editor. We could do some basic cut and copy paste, but the intention, and if we wanted to see kind of a full screen view, we could just hit F8, and at this point we could have the video. So it's not intended to be a video editor, but we could have video and compose or process audio and then reattach it to the video. So you could just do it, just like that. So your video track can be incorporated directly in the project. So, but it's not just like most video editors, you don't do audio editing in. It's not really kind of the intention. Okay, so we have a question. On my studio computer PC with 12, I have 1202 and 12 works 100%. On my other computer, 1203, where it messes up a bit, is it necessary to update to 1203? So it isn't. It's helped out a lot of people with different issues. But it's not necessary. So you could upgrade whenever you want. All right, so we have a question. I need tools for working with 5.1 surround. Will I be able to do this? So, of course, you can just come over here. You'll have kind of all of your 5.1 support, as well as in Cubase Pro 12, you'll have Dolby Atmos support. So if we go to your audio connections, at this point, we could add an output. We could add, let's say, a 5.1 bus. At this point, we could add a particular audio track to the 5.1 bus. So we'll say, okay, now this is going out to the 5.1 bus, and we go to the panner for this particular track. Let's just say we'll come here, and now we'll have kind of your full 5.1 surround panner. You could adjust how much is going to your LFE. So all of your 5.1, all of your plugins will work in 5.1 if they're VST3 and properly written. So yeah, you could do that in addition to doing Dolby Atmos if you need to as well. So Steinberg has always been kind of was always a strong and early proponent of surround sound and surround processing and editing. So no problems with 5.1. All right, so we have Razel checking in from Denmark. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, Mark Rabin just mentions he's been experimenting with some Bill Evans chord voicings in Cubase, and he's been elated with Cubase's flexibility, so that's great. He played some great voicings. Obviously, incredibly talented pianist. All right, so I just see Jeff Sabelski just saying copy paste works easily in Cubase Pro in a window with 2 video tracks for simple video editing. Even easy for me. The video is edited in real-time editing program. All right, so we see from Unicorn Production says, "Oh, I had no idea there's so many features in Cubase. Big love from Ukraine, by the way. Need to buy and try." So thanks for joining us on the live stream. Realize that time is probably precious, and time priorities have changed in Ukraine, so we appreciate you taking time to be on the live stream. So I'm going to check, but I may be at the end of questions. Let me just check on my other feed just to make sure. Bear with me just for a second. All right, so we'll see if there's some more questions that kind of pop up. We have some questions that were sent in advance, so I'll go ahead and go to some of the questions that were sent in advance. All right, so a question, what is the best way to change the name of your project? Most of the time, I get the best title of my song after some time when the song is nearly finished. So I want to avoid the problems with several different titles. So one of the things that you could do is just come over here and, quickly just do a save as. And if you wanted to just kind of change the name of the project, after it's been started, you could just save the particular project there. If you wanted to, and that will go into the project folder that was originally defined when you started the particular project. So, but if you wanted to, let's say you want to change the entire folder which contains the project and all the audio files, the video files, the edits, the frozen files, you could come over to your file menu. And so if you wanted to just clean up stuff, just choose the backup project. And from the backup project, it will ask you to choose a new folder. And then you could name the new folder, the title, the new name of the project that you want, and just simply save. And then, as we do this, I'll say, okay, let's do a new folder. I'll just call this backup project. So this will be a unique folder. And then you'll be asked, once we do this, you could give a new project name here. You could keep the current project active. You can minimize audio files, which will, like if you are using 10 seconds of a 10-minute audio recording, not back up the 9 minutes and 50 seconds of audio that's not being used. You can make direct offline processing permanent, remove unused files, whether you want to back up the mixdown folder or the video folder. So we could do all of that right there. So if you want to just rename the project, you could do that. Or if you wanted to rename the project folder, try using the backup project. All right, so we have a question. I have a few projects made in 44.1 and some others in 48 kilohertz. I guess that when it's not for film, the best sample rate would be 44.1 kilohertz. Do you agree? And how do you change the sample rate without having some issues afterwards? And A, if there's no audio in the project, and B, if there are some audio tracks. So let's say, a lot of people have gravitated to working at 48K thinking that eventually at some point that their video, their audio would be incorporated within a project. I still know plenty of people doing, massive projects that work at 24-bit 44.1. So either sample rate is fine. It just, but pick a common sample rate for an entire project would probably make sense. So once you're kind of once you're kind of starting a project, just kind of pick and choose a sample rate. If you think that it's really not a huge deal to, do sample rate conversions on files. And if we, are in let's say, we're currently, this is at 44.1. And if I wanted to change the project to be at 48K, the easy way to do this is to go to, we'll just say, let's get to the profile man. I'll just come over here to the project setup under the project menu, which you could also access by hitting Shift+S. And at this point, we could just say, okay, I want it to be 48K, hit OK. And it says convert audio files to the new rate. We'll say yes. Do you want to keep the files in the pool directory? So the source files, the original files, the 44.1, you could replace them, but unless you have like really minimal hard disk space, keep them just in case. And then it'll ask, do you want to convert to sample rate clips in musical mode? So we'll say convert, and it says, do you want to keep these source files in the pool directory? So we'll say keep. And we'll get one more prompt. And do you want to keep the audio events at their sample positions? Choose no here. and then all of your files are now at 48K. So that's all you have to do to kind of switch to the different sample rates. So it's really not a huge deal to commonly switch between different sample rates. Okay, so it says, and also kind of another point on this. So, you don't have any, so if there's no audio files, you could just simply, switch a sample rate. But with audio files, if you just have MIDI and virtual instruments, you could just change the sample rate without any change. But if you wanted to go directly, with audio files, you just do the conversion stage. And our question says, now I want to have one sample rate in all my Cubase projects. If I have several ones, I have problems with YouTube playback. Sometimes the pitch is too high. Sometimes it's too low. It depends on my Windows sample rate setup. So, generally YouTube will play back kind of a constant sample rate. I haven't had many people, have issues of, having pitch discrepancies on YouTube. I think YouTube prefers 44.1K, but can play back higher sample rates, including 48K. But I think the kind of the default, algorithm that they prefer is 44.1K. But and if it's pitched high for you, it could be that maybe you have the sample rate on your audio interface is not switching back and forth. Like maybe it's locked to a particular sample rate if it's being locked to an external clock or something like that. All right, so another question. Is it possible to use two Stream Decks and map them in MIDI remote control without having issues? So yeah, all you had to do with the Stream Decks is, there's a little MIDI utility so that basically each of the buttons can transmit a particular MIDI message, like a MIDI note or a MIDI CC or a MIDI program change at various values. And each Stream Deck would be assigned to different MIDI ports. So, you would have, like, if I go to my MIDI in here, I don't have it connected. But let's say if I go to my MIDI input here, I can see Stream Deck in. And you may have to configure this with a loopback device, but you could have more than one Stream Deck connected and be using it as MIDI remote. So on my personal computer, I didn't get my Stream Deck hooked up. I probably should have on my work computer, but I have like every Cubase menu function that's kind of organized by menus set up on my Stream Deck, so I could access all those things really quickly. All right, so another question. When I use render in place, it converts the instrument track into audio, but there is extremely loud noise above 0 dB when I stop the playback. Why is that? I discovered that when I choose in render settings complete signal path, it is correct. Why can't I use dry without this peaking noise? So let me know if that's with a particular plugin. I've never experienced that. So let's say if I just wanted to come here, and I'll just do a quick render in place of this. So I'll just come here and just do a quick render in place. I'll go to my render settings and we'll choose dry. And we will just listen to just the audio. So no real difference there. Let's say if I wanted to go to an instrument, like I have some have a Groove Agent virtual instrument here. All right, so I'll just come here and I'll just render in place. And we'll go to our render settings. I'll choose dry here as well. So, and as we listen to this, so just my random gibberish drums. So no loud burst. So if you could let us know if it's the loud burst is with a particular plugin only or with all plugins, but doesn't seem to exhibit that behavior for me. Okay, so let's jump back to the live questions. We'll come back to some of the mailed in ones. All right, just reading through. All right, just reading through comments here. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is from Jeff Sabelski. Using the project window, I changed 44.1K / 16-bit audio waves to 24-bit to... All right, so I see 24K, 24-bit, but only changed the sample rate and not the bit rate. Obviously missing something. So, you know, Cubase can have multiple bit depths, you know, so you have a 16-bit, a 20, a 24-bit file. So let's say if I come here and let's add some audio tracks. All right, so I'm going to record on this track. Let me go to my project setup here. All right, and I'm going to choose the record file format for the project is 16-bit. So I'll go ahead and we'll just record. All right, so we look at this particular file, we see that's a 16-bit 44.1 file. If I come to this, and let's get to the project setup and change this to 24-bit, it will now, as we record in, and we look at the info line for this file. So here we can say, okay, this is 24-bit 44.1. The first one we did was 16. That said 16-bit. All right, so this is, all right, I'll try this again. All right, so let me just look in the pool window here. All right, so this is kind of indicating what the file is, but we can see that I have a 16-bit, a 24-bit, a 16-bit file. So I'll go to Audio 04, and we'll just switch this to 32-bit and record on this. So this is just kind of showing you what the file is, but if you wanted to look at the file, go to the pool window. So we'll see audio 4 will be 32-bit, 16-bit, or third file, 24-bit, 16-bit there. So, but it's perfectly normal to have multiple audio file bit depths within the same project, but having one common sample rate. See Carrie Studios just saying dongle gone, I'm buying today. And also, if you're not aware of this, if you're switching from other programs, I think tomorrow, June 15th, the cross-grade promotion ends. So take advantage of that if you have other programs. All right, so just seeing from Jeff Sabelski, pro cellist recorded last week, 3-hour session, 2 mics on mono tracks, but mid-session on one project, the recorded waves turned into stereo recording on both tracks, then back to mono. So maybe, I'm not sure if you did any editing or if there was, a mix down or a render in place that took place, but it seems odd that it would turn into a stereo track by itself. But if you have if you want to send me the project with, just like a little bit of the mono or stereo files, or you could send it without media to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I'd be happy to take a look at it for you. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce from London on the live stream. It's always better when Michael is on. All right, just reading through comments. Okay, just reading through. My chat field just jumped on me, so. All right, so we have a question from Mike Rivera. What's the best way to gain stage each track, and what Cubase plugin is recommended? I do -16 dB on tracks and +6 on master in Ableton. Thanks, Greg. The best gain structure, I think, I'll just go ahead and revert this. It's basically, think of, you don't want to add unnecessary gain that could add noise to your signal. So it's, it starts with kind of the tracking process to make sure that you're getting, good signals to work with. But let's take a look at this. And even though this is kind of like a rock thing, when we look at the gain on the actual recording itself, just looking at the waveforms, we see that's pretty conservative here, because there's lots of different areas to add gain. When we look at the faders, so let's say we see like, healthy meters that is going on, and we could adjust, kind of, whether your fader goes to 6 dB or 12 dB over 0 if you wanted to, but often just making sure that you have good structure here, and if you're sending it to groups, that you have a healthy gain going to your output. So a lot of people will try to aim for -12 or -6 dB at the channel level, and not to go over like -6 on the output stage if they're, but it depends if you're sending it to mastering as well. So if it's going to a mastering engineer, be more conservative, or if it's kind of something that you're kind of, doing the mastering stage, the final processing on as well, you could just simply, add different gain stages here and different master effects. Like if I wanted to take this and if I wanted to kind of boost it with like Razor as like kind of a, let's say under dynamics. So if I wanted to have like, a really high level quality limiter, it's incredibly fast, where you can set kind of release times manually, or so you could kind of make up for gain in a number of different areas. Just try not to have, like really low gain one area and boost it unnecessarily in other areas. Try to have a healthy gain throughout the whole signal flow, and then the gain structure will just kind of work well for you. So it's not necessarily like a plugin that does that, but you could also use compressors as well. So okay, just reading through comments. See a lot of discussion of Bill Evans. I've met his son a couple times. Okay, so you see why when I load a VST instrument when playing or composing a beat, Cubase stops all the sound for a few seconds. So sometimes it will do that, but it could depend on the instrument, but often it's resetting delay compensations. So let's say if I just add a Groove Agent SE, we can see that it's one of the things that was sped up in Cubase 12, but sometimes in earlier versions it may be doing like a license check on the E-licenser, and so there's no E-licenser calls. It's sped up pretty dramatically in Cubase 12. So let me know if you're running Cubase 12, but you should see a difference in speed with that. All right, we see Match Deepers made the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Greg, when setting up two mics for acoustic instrument like cello or oboe or acoustic guitar, can Nuendo detect phase issues with mic placement before the recording begins? So if you really wanted to do that, let's say I want to take like the snare top and bottom here. Okay, so we'll just solo these, and we'll see if my friend Fred, he's usually a great engineer. So let's say we have these two snares playing. So let's say I have these. All right, and now let's come over here to let's get to our main section in the control room. All right, so let's say if we're kind of looking at the phase, but let's say if I reverse the phase on one of them. So we could even so let's say so let's watch just the phase meter here. So let's say I invert the phase on one of the snares. So, often as you're kind of working, use like the phase meter can give you a good idea if if you have two tracks that are going to be, like a multi-mic'd system, use the phase meter and just do a quick recording also and see if like, as you're listening to it, as you do just like a quick recording, you could actually just kind of even look at the waveforms themselves. And like when you zoom in, so let's say, and then you could just determine to see if, the amplitude is going to be similar, but, just come right over here and just, choose to invert the phase or not on a particular track. And if you're doing it, I think you could even do it on the input channels. So say if I come and look at my input channels, you could also just come here and flip the phase on input channels during record, and you should hear a pretty significant difference if one of the tracks was out of phase. And that could give you an idea of your phase relationships during tracking. So give that a shot. But use the meters that are included. Okay, so we see, is there a Wavelab version of these live sessions? So we do answer Wavelab questions here, but there is, Justin Perkins does a Wavelab live stream, I think once a month. So I'm not sure if it's as Q&A focused, it may be kind of more topic based, but there is a dedicated Wavelab live stream. But if you have a Wavelab question, we take any Steinberg question on any Steinberg product here. So. All right, so we see Michael Pierce had a live stream. So Michael, you should share the live stream link if you can. I'd be interested to see. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right, so we just see from Jeff Sabelski, it says Greg, send without media means send project folder. Is there a size limit to send? So generally, what a lot of people do, if you wanted to send like the whole project, you could share a link, upload a link and or send it via Dropbox or WeTransfer. I often get a lot of files from WeTransfer. So that information, so if it's bigger, but if you wanted to, I understand sometimes that, you may not want to send actual audio files if it's like in the middle of a project or that's copywritten. So stuff like that. So I would just respect that sensitivity. But if you wanted to send audio files, that would be fine. And you could just upload it and share like a download link. And I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it. All right, so we have Soren checking in from Sweden. All right, so we see question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to modify the mode of several elements in MIDI remote at the same time? For example, change all sliders from pickup to jump mode. So let's give it a shot and see. so let's say if I have mine set up here, so let's see if we could do this. So maybe a one at a time. And I'll just try a new page because this might be kind of auto-generated. Let me just, or I'll just plug in my other remote here quickly. Let's try my choice OS and see if we can get that. All right, so let's say we're here and let's get to maybe the controller surface. I'll just build one from scratch here quick. Okay, that's good. So I think that it might be just set to one controller at a time. So let's come here. Yeah, I think it's going to be one controller at a time, but I could, if you want to send me an email, I could play around with it and see if there's kind of once it's been assigned. So it could depend on the particular functions. Let's say, okay, I want to assign this to quick control. So let's see if we have those three selected. So I think it's going to be one event at a time. So let's say if we come here and yeah, so I think it's going to be one at a time, but I could play around with it if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see Graham Witcher joining us from Royal Bhutan Basset. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we didn't do one on Friday, so we had our live stream on Saturday instead. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, when I have a track with volume automation on it, so now I detect the whole volume track needs to be a little louder, so all automation the same amount. I would like to shift all automation with a fader. How can I do this as using the fader? Problem is this only add changes at the point where the playhead is. So add automation data. All right, so if we have a number, there's a couple ways you could do this. So let's say if I have automation going on, all right, and if I wanted to, select, let's say, all of my automation here. So one is to, select all of your automation and just bring it up or down. So if you select, if you're in the combo select tool, you can now just go from the bottom, select all your automation and bump it up or down, and that will keep it proportional. You could also just say, okay, I want to take the selected automation, and if it's if you have the automation selected, you go to, you could come right over here and from the info line increase your automation values like so. So let's say, okay, it's -972. If you wanted to also go to the project logical editor where you wanted it to be like something you could access from a keyboard shortcut, we could say media type is equal to automation, trim, let's increment by 1 dB. So I could just come here and just kind of hit that button, or we could choose to decrement in dB. So if you wanted, so there's a number of ways to do that. We could also, if we go to trim, if you switch the automation mode here to trim, and let's just grab the fader of this particular track. Like as I adjust, and I'm going to write the automation. So as I wanted to come here, I could trim the automation up. And then you could kind of take the existing point there. So say I bring it down. And as I said, that will just kind of trim. So you could trim automation. So there's a number of ways to kind of do that as well. So if you wanted to just, increase or decrease, just drag it here or adjust your values there, or the easiest ways. Or if you wanted to add a dB, subtract a dB in the automation, you could use the project logical editor as well. Okay, so we see a tricky question for you, Greg. I use global copy to copy and paste diverse course segments when I create music. Can I global copy all tracks but not one of the tracks? Okay, so let me close this. All right, and I'll just, so let's say I want to copy all of these particular tracks. Let me just remove. Okay, so let's say I'll just come. All right, so I'll just do this. So, the global is global, which kind of makes sense if I wanted to come over here. So, if we say, okay, I want to global copy when I come here, we could global paste. So it's just going to be Alt V. So if I, wanted to, if I used like the range tool, let's say, like I want to take all of these tracks here. If you use the range tool, we can now take the range and copy. If I do it correctly, sorry about that. So let's say if I was using the range tool, so let's say I globally select everything here, or let's say I have all these selected with the range tool. We could choose to, crop the range amount and then copy, but the global copy is named global for a reason. And if I just wanted to copy that instead of move it, sorry, just keep messing up. So let's say I have all of my tracks selected and I didn't want the top one, we could resize the range selection. But, the global is global for a reason, but you could just say I want it all of these and hold down Alt Shift and just copy manually. But global will include global, but you could select multiple events here and hold down Control if you didn't want that to copy particular range. So you could do that as well if you wanted to exclude something. Hold down Control or Command and click on it if it is selected. But by definition, global would include all of the different components. Okay, so just see a question. Hi, Greg. Can you use a Midi to only mute a track so that if the track is already muted, the Midi command won't do anything? Okay, so I guess this is like a Midi remote. So let's come over here. And I'll just sneak back over to my nano control. So let's say, okay, so I think, all right, so let's say if we have tracks that are muted, so we might set project logical editor. Okay, so let's say we're going to take media, we'll say container type is equal to track. And then let's say our track operation mute, enable. Okay, so let's say, and let's make it for selected track. So I will come over here and say property is set. You don't have to do this if it's selected, but this way it won't do it for everything. All right, and we'll save this as a preset. Okay, so let's go ahead and assign this button in my MIDI remote to trigger that logical editor preset. And we'll see if that affects. Okay, so if I'm on this track and I hit that button, all right, so let me go ahead and close. Yeah, so if you have that function, so right now, excuse me, like this track isn't muted, and then I could mute it. But if the track is already muted, when I hit a button, it will maintain. It won't unmute it. So I'll just make sure that makes sense. Yeah, so you could do that. So again, the project logical editor, and if I'm misunderstanding, please let me know. You go to the setup, so you can say, container type is equal to track. Property is set to selected, and that's if you only want it to be on the selected track versus all tracks, and track operation mute enable. But if it's already muted, then that won't turn off the muting. You could also set it to disable or to toggle if you wanted to. So, but I think that should kind of meet what you want to do. All right, so just see a comment. It's always a good lesson for people from Soren. Let me just find it again. So Soren has just mentioned the glitching audio I had was power loss in USB ports, and it turned out it was because of the fact that a SSD drive it connected halfway and motherboard getting confused. So you always be aware of your USB power. All right, so we also see, can you assign a Midi command to enable, disable monitoring on a track? All right, so let's say I'm on this particular track. So we could come over to our project. So I think you could even just do that. Like I want to take this button and we'll just search for monitor. And if you don't see this area here, you just click right here. And sometimes you could actually, so an even easier way is, let's say I have this button that I want for monitoring, right click on monitor and pick up for MIDI remote mapping, click apply mapping. And now we could just come over here at any track that you're on. You could just monitor directly there. So if I wanted to go down to this track, we could just enable monitoring on that particular track, or you could set up a project logical editor to do that as well. And to do a project logical editor, we would come over to the project logical editor setup and say we want to take our selected track and we want to take track operation, monitor, and then we could just choose to enable. And then you could assign a keyboard shortcut or like a MIDI remote script, just like we did earlier. Okay, so we see Michael Pierce. Okay, just see a comment maybe for monitoring through Avioms for monitoring. So, but maybe Michael Pierce's, I think, may have an Aviom system. So I know what some people have done with Aviom systems for headphone monitoring is just to route them, is create groups. So what a lot of people I know, because depending on the configuration, if you're not using the control room, you could come over here and often, set your Q mixes out to Avioms for that. But some people will create for their Aviom systems, like, 8 group tracks. And ideally you want stereo, but depending on how many outputs you have. And then each of these groups, we could, at this point, send these to, come to your outputs here. So we go to your audio connections. And at this point, you want, if you have multiple outputs here, so we'll just add, let's say, 4 stereo buses or whatever that we want. And we could assign these to the different outputs. So, and at this point, we could say, let's go to, each of the tracks that we wanted to send to monitoring. We could now come over here and use sends to send to each of the groups. And we could do, that way you could send to the different Aviom, channels where the different headphone mixes here directly from groups using the sends. And some people will go and use the large mix console. And if you go to the racks to direct output routing, if you don't need necessarily, we could enable direct routing something. But if you wanted to add all of your groups here, that you could route each of the channels, if you didn't need like a lot of level control, each of the channels you could now route to different groups, or we could think of these as being the headphone mixes from your Aviom. So you may have to set it to groups and then route to the groups via sends or via direct outputs. All right, so it says, Greg, I really wish we could have access to the Cubase 12 elements and help my friend with it. Like in the past, we got all versions of Cubase when we bought the Pro. So I'm not sure if that was intended to work that way. I think, because it's a different, under the new licensing system, because they're different builds, but I'll make sure to kind of pass that along. All right, wonderful to see Mandy Lane back on the live stream. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so we just see, it says, I have a question. When I first boot up Cubase 12, it takes a long time for it to boot, going through all the plugins. Is there a way to have it boot up faster? So generally, it's going through all the plugins. Like the very first time you do it, it will go through all the plugins to do kind of a compliance check and measure the latency. And then generally after that, it's much faster at doing that. So if you have plugins that are constantly being maybe added or are blacklisted or 32-bit or some kind of maybe suspect older plugins that maybe aren't up to date, that could cause a long time for the program to open. But generally, the very first time it's doing like, analysis of your plugins, it's confirming the latency compensation to make sure it's correct and all that. So it takes a little while the very first time, but it should be faster after that. All right. Just had an email come in from Paul Hasslinger. So any Tangerine Dream fans would know him. All right. All right. We see Jeff Sabelski indicating he has no more questions for today, and he's going to move to the back of the class. You're always welcome to ask any other questions that you have. So you don't even have to go to the back of the class. All right, so I see when I load Groove Agent and change some drum sound or change some MIDI note and use the save in Drum Agent, it doesn't load the save drums preset. How do you edit and save in Groove Agent? All right, so let's take a look. All right, so say I just have a kit here, so let me make sure. So let's say I just want to change drum sounds. All right, so let me just find like a kick drum here. All right, so let's say I want to replace that drum sound. Okay, so let me just come here. I'm just going to right click, rename kit. Okay, so maple, different kick. All right. So I will go ahead and remove this track. Let's come over to my media bay, jump home. Okay, so just so I resaved, I renamed the kit here, and then also just saved a preset, and we can see that that was automatically carried over from the other preset. So let me know if I did something differently than you did. All right, we see David Griffiths from Wales. So thanks for joining us. And Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, and Michael Pierce says he wants people to beat the heat with his soup of chilled peas, watercress, loads of peas, watercress stock, mint and lemon, juice zest blend, seasoned chill, served with yogurt and ice cubes. Ice cream, basically. So sounds like a good recipe. Thank you for sharing. There we see a nice comment from Paul Claridge, says, thank you so much for doing this. I learned so much. I would have given up a long time, would have given up long ago without this. So I'm glad that we could teach you new tricks with your investment that you made in Steinberg products. All right, so we see from Soren, so question, I create video questions sometimes to send to you in Cubase by using monitor on a track mic and screen recording. I can get Cubase audio and my talking to video. Can it be done in Wavelab? So, you know, if you just simply load a, you know, if you have like a screen capture video and you wanted to, you know, you could play, you know, so if you have like the screen capture video of what you've recorded and you know, so even in OBS, you could, you know, record the source and then have a separate microphone signal and have like, you know, the Cubase audio and then have your microphone if it's on a different audio interface, you could have that set up. But you could take, you know, video that's already been recorded and then just ask your, you know, record the audio of your question in Cubase or Wavelab, either way. But it's, you know, sometimes you might have to, you know, if you're dealing with, you know, different, you know, as you're capturing the audio, you might have to have an audio track just simply, you know, record enabled, you know, like, you know, an audio track in your project that you record the voice in, because often, you know, the video programs don't share the audio interface because they're not using ASIO often, just using kind of standard Windows drivers. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a specific location where all my plugins should be on a hard drive? Mine are in several locations. If I could put them all in one spot, it would be easier to troubleshoot. So generally, you know, VST3 plugins will go into a common folder. VST2 plugins, you know, some companies will have like a preset path for the VST2 plugins. A lot of people would put it into, you know, Steinberg, you know, like program files, like on Windows program files, Steinberg VST plugins. But it doesn't really matter where it is as long as you can tell Cubase, you know, it's only with VST2 plugins, which is kind of one of the problems, that they could be installed anywhere and people can find their plugins. But you want to, like, if you go to the studio menu to VST plugin manager, that you could come over here and you could just click on the setup and then you could see the path here. So, and just make sure that you're aware of where the path is. So some people, and you could have subfolders, and this will look for subfolders within a master folder. So a lot of times people, you know, like on Windows, we'll have a program files, you know, VST plugins or program file Steinberg VST plugins. You know, it doesn't really matter where, as long as, you know, your Cubase can find it easily enough. And while we're here, we had a question last week about where do all of the like VST plugin collections, where's the file that those get stored into. So I did a little looking after Saturday's live stream. So we'll show this location here. So we'll go to Finder, and this will be slightly different on if you're on Mac or PC. But if you go to the application folder, and you'll see the plugin manager XML, and this is the file where all of the particular plugins will, where all the plugin collection presets get stored into the plugin manager XML file. So just go ahead and quit that. So that's the particular file there. So you might be able to resurrect particular plugins right from there. So sorry about that. All right, so we see a question from Jeff Zabelski. The Raven piano, the concert experience setting, what kind of reverb do you think they used? Can I emulate that style reverb using the grand pianos? So it's truly last question. So you can ask as many questions as you want. So that's why we're here, just to answer questions for people. So let's go take a look at on the Raven piano, which comes with Hallian Sonic and full version of Hallian. And see if we could figure it out. And let me just find a preset that Jeff was asking about. All right, so let's see if we could come over here. Let's look at the macro view of it. So I think it's just going to be maybe yeah, so if we kind of look at the reverb here, looks like it's just the standard reverb. So let's come over here. So it's just going to be the standard reverb that comes inside of, let's see if we can get, yeah, so the reverb here is just the hall reverb that's with the standard. So now if we play, so it looks like it's just a standard hall reverb that comes with Hallian, so which is probably going to be the maybe the RoomWorks reverb. So you could try that if you wanted to apply it to other projects. Right, we appreciate Jazz Dude being on top of moderation. Just going through reporting. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to have my playing transcribed in the score editor, real time or after, trying to find ways to notate audio performance? So yeah, you could do that. So if it could depend if it's just going to be for a monophonic source, like a single voiced instrument, like, saxophone, your voice. It's not going to do like from audio. It's not going, and just let me make sure that it's okay. So it's only going to be working with kind of monophonic sources. But if you wanted to, and this probably isn't with a tempo map, but if we go to Very Audio. And now that we do this, we could go to under functions. If I don't close the tab here, so we'll go under functions and extract Midi. And now that we've done that, we can see our Midi show up here. And if we wanted to see that in notation, And we could obviously clean up the notation here, but so let's say, okay, I just want to quantize So at that point, you could see kind of transcription, but you may have to clean up some of the MIDI stuff, but you could do it, but only for kind of like a single voice instrument. It's not going to do like guitar chords, piano chords, or string quartets that are playing harmonies, stuff like that. It's not going to really manage. Okay, so let's see, we have a question. So one, sometimes a project starts to paste events before the playhead mouse cursor instead of after. Is this a setting I'm accidentally triggering or a bug? All right, so let's say I have this event here. Okay, so if I copy, let's say I copy this event, I move my playhead here, and let's paste. So I'll just do that again without moving the playhead. So let's say I go right to 240 and I paste the event, that it automatically paste that event right there. Now let's try just something and say, okay, when we double click here, that if we have the show events, let's see if we move the snap point later in the file. All right, and I'll move my playhead to 249.1.1. All right, so let's move my playhead back. And so if we have maybe the snap point set differently, let's see if that changes. So copy this. And paste. All right, so if it is, if there is a snap point, and you could see this in the sample editor, when you have show events or show clips, and this allows you to have like a different point be kind of the reference. So if that snap point is set to somewhere else in the file, that could cause the file to be pasted earlier than expected. So try to, if you go into the sample editor in 12 and you can see like the little snap point indicator, it's slightly different. You may have to go to like the little setup window here and go to overview line or snap. But it looks like if the snap point is turned on, that could paste it at the snap point as opposed to the beginning of the file. So check that. So we have a question. Is it possible to have new tracks added to a project and not get added to the mixer view unless I manually add? So currently, when you have a mixer view, and this is, understand that this could be annoying, but, and let's say you have a project with defined mixer channels. So let's say we're here and I only want to look at, let's say, my group channels. So if I just come here, let's say we're going to only look at group channels, and we have 1 through 8. And then I go and add a particular mixer, like I add, let's say, an audio track, and I add another group. That now when we go to the mixer view, that we can see our other, group track and other tracks that can be added to the configuration automatically. So there isn't a way that I know of to stop that. There's advantages and disadvantages in that, sometimes as you're working, you may want, since that wasn't in, you may want that to be visible. I know that the planning and developers are aware of the issue, but I'll make sure to reiterate it again, but currently not that I know of. Okay, so we see a question. What benefits are there to the full Groove Agent versus the SE version? With the full version of Groove Agent, there's some advantages to it. So one is we'll go ahead and just add it as an instrument track here. One is you get not only a single agent, but you could have multi-agents. So these will basically work as Groove Agent 5 MIDI channel 1, 2, 3, 4. So this will allow you to have, let's say, maybe, maybe kind of like, combination of different, like a hybrid kit. So say, okay, I want this kit to be loaded. So let's say I want a, more of a, electronic kit to be added in this agent. I want an acoustic agent to be added into this one. So I could have, acoustic drums, and I wanted to combine that with like an 808 style kick or more electronic. And I also could have a dedicated agent that's a percussion agent. So if I just wanted to kind of, then I could have these agents kind of all playing kind of, with each other. So if I wanted to come here, let's load a kit with a pattern, and I'll just load one that has some patterns. So now if I just want to bring this in, I could and now if we wanted to go to our mixer, we could combine all these different sources. So I could look at this as kind of like, when we go to our mixer, we could look at it as kind of our agents mixer, master. So if I just want to come to, my different agents, we could come over here and be able to, control the volumes independently or have different. So while we come here, we can say, okay, I just wanted to go to, have my percussion be louder. We can have more actual patterns. So Groove Agent SE, we could have 16 patterns, but in the full Groove Agent, we could have up to 128 patterns. There's a kind of performance mode. So once we're in, so you get more content, more kits, more patterns. But once we go into, we also have different performance modes. So if you wanted to do like note repeat functionalities, you could do that. If you wanted to build kits, you could also just choose, to record directly into, particular kits. So if you want to do sampling and do sampling drum machine type work where you want more of an MPC workflow, you have that as well. I think just the upgrade is worth it just for the percussion agent, just to add like sweetening and production. You just throw on a percussion agent on most tracks and it'll just sound better, and it'll kind of have that produced sound. So definitely worth it. There's some more clarifications when classifying different sounds. Like if I throw a drum loop in, that we could classify all of the snares and say use this one snare as opposed to other snares because this is the best hit every time this sound comes up. So you get more with it. Sampling, note repeat, and a percussion agent are like some big ones. So. All right. Jump back. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. Just go back to my monitoring computer. All right, so just reading through. All right, so we have a question. We have Kim Person calling. She's an amazing audio engineer. All right, so we see, can you assign a MIDI command to do multiple things? For example, use MIDI command to mute track 1 and also turn monitoring on track 2. So generally it's, think of it as a single function, each button doing a single function. Because how would you know that you wanted to do monitoring or muting, so I think it makes sense to do that. If you wanted to switch to different mapping pages, you could do that, but that probably takes longer than, so if you have just a limited number of controls, maybe you could assign the same physical button and go to a different mapping page and have that control do something different. But it's hard to know, how would you expect a program to know if you wanted to mute and monitor if it's the same button that's doing the same, two different functions. Okay, so we just see, so with the pasting to the wrong spot, so say, it says it's pasting maybe to the tail. So let me just turn off my use video files edit mode. All right, so, you can, if you wanted to just take a particular event, if you go to move, we could say, in Cubase 12 now, so, you could move to, move the event start to the cursor. And again, that's going to be based on where that snap point is. Or we could say, go to edit to move to event ends to cursor. So, maybe, I'm not sure if you're, but if you're pasting it there, maybe you could use the move to commands and see if that makes a difference. But, check to make sure that you have the sync point or the snap point set correctly. Okay, so let's see, we have a question. Hey, Greg, was just working on something and thought, is there a way to bring in a batch of audio files on different tracks and have a macro that lines them up back to back to back? Okay, so you probably could. Let's go ahead and let me just import a couple of files here. So, you know, when you go to import, let's say I'll do a new project. Now let's go to import audio files. All right, I'll just find a bunch of samples here. Okay, so let's say I have. All right, so when we do this, we could, when we go to import tracks, we can say insert objects onto one track. And now every one of the samples will be just inserted right next to each other. Now, if we have these on different tracks, we could probably just create a quick macro. So let me just add a number of audio tracks here. And I'll just move these to the front. Sorry to put them in so far out. All right, so let's say if I have okay, so if we have this track selected, there is a move to selected track. All right, and then so we could move it to that track, and let's say, okay, let's see if we could build this as a macro. All right, so let's do new. right, so say just get to move to selected track. Okay, so we'll add that. All right, and let's so we're gonna then nudge one frame over, and then let's under preferences, let's auto select events under cursor. Okay, so let's say if we all right, so let's try this. See if I just lost my macro, but I think at that point, if we, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, but I think if we do that, and then if you hit B twice, so let's say we move the cursor once we have that done, and then we say move selection. Let's see if we do a move to event starts to cursor, that would move it, and then so you could. So you can kind of get it set up in a macro, and if you want to email me, I could have it prepared for Friday's live stream. But I think you could do it. I'm sorry, I lost the macro that I created. But you could just import the files and have them all lined up as well. All right. All right, so we see question, is this an official channel from Steinberg? So yeah, we're broadcasting on the Cubase YouTube channel. So that's the official Cubase channel from Steinberg. All right, so I see any news on the notorious focus color. So I will have a meeting this week again. So my Meeting was kind of postponed. One of the guys was on holiday, so I will see if I could get an answer as to that or play with it some more. All right, so we see Benny just saying, "Do you see me?" So I see you there asking a question, but not sure if you had asked other questions. I know sometimes we have, sometimes we seem to lose questions from you in the chat. So I just see maybe I missed the answer to my question, but maybe if you could just ask it again, just make sure, and I'll let you know if we have covered it. So I just see, is there a Euro NAM? So I don't think that there's the equivalent. There used to be in Frankfurt, there was the Music Messe, but I don't think it was kind of dying before COVID hit, but I don't think it's existing anymore. So, but I think there's some more kind of focused regional shows. I know a lot of people went to like Super Booth, which is kind of more synth oriented. All right, my chat field just jumped on me, so let me just. Okay, just reading through different comments. So thanks for all the great questions. See, we're at what 114 likes or something already. So thank you so much. All right, seeing some discussion. John McLaughlin, so wonderful guitarist. All right, so it's just a question from Jeff Zabelski. My Steinberg library is 400 gigabytes, OS on a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, projects on the second 1 terabyte NVMe. With the library with 32 gigs of RAM, does it matter which drive the library is on, and can library be on the SATA drive? So it can be on the SATA drive, but that might, you might notice it when working with like Iconica, that it's going to be kind of loading up not as fast. So there's like you could I would do like audio recordings if you're concerned about if you have concerns about size or speed or just space, is like the audio recordings probably aren't as critical to be on a super fast drive and will play back fine from a SATA drive. But when working with virtual instruments and a lot of orchestral stuff, that would benefit from the from your SSD drives. So we see question, can Cubase sync up with UA Luna? So I'm not sure what the sync capabilities are. Some people running multiple DAWs will just have it sync by Midi timecode. So I'm not sure if Luna can sync to Midi timecode or SMPTE. If it does, you can, Cubase can sync to external timecode. I'm not sure if Luna can export external time code, or what it, or if it's kind of still closed system with that. So, but if it syncs to SMPTE or Midi time code, shouldn't be a problem. All right, great to see Jarlath Quinn on. So glad you could join us today. All right, so we see Joe saying beats was the snap point was it. So glad we could figure that out. See Michael Teams, we see a discussion of great guitarist, and we see Michael Teams bring up Alan Holdsworth. So super nice guy, long time Cubase user. I got to help him switch to Mac from his Atari maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So super nice guy. I miss getting calls from Alan. He's incredibly humble. So always felt like he was bothering me when he called. I'm like, hey, I get to talk to Alan Holdsworth. I win. So. All right, so we see Tiago from Brazil joining us. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Can you suggest a DAW controller with 8 faders for Cubase for mixing? Was contemplating Icon Pro Audio Platform M+. Would really appreciate if you could shed some light. So most of the 8-channel units are going to be, utilizing the Mackie control, which has been used for a long time. It's probably been 20, 25 years since the Mackie control, was... maybe probably 20, 22 years since Mackie control became kind of a paradigm. So, so many of the control surfaces will function basically the same way. So there's a number of 8-channel control surfaces that, will work with Mackie control, that have transport, that have like a little jog wheel, that, have 8 motorized faders and maybe a couple knobs for parameters, 8 buttons for user defined functions like an encoder for panning, so most of them can be pretty similar. So whatever one that you kind of like the feel of, I know like pros that will use like, a really inexpensive Behringer, and they're happy with it and it's fine, and they travel with it and it works every time and no problem. Some people like the new SSL UF8, I think is the name of the controller. A lot of people, a happy medium is using kind of something like the Icon. So it could really, functionally, most of the 8 fader control surfaces will integrate with the software the same way. So it could really determine if, like sometimes you may touch a piece of gear and you're like, no, yuck, I don't like the feel. I don't feel like it's, engaging to touch. Then that may be something to stay away from. But, functionality, I think they'll all be pretty similar. So, and some people like, okay, I want to have something that looks like a large mixer that I could, when people come to my house and I want to charge them money, that it looks impressive and it's like, oh, he has that thing that I don't have. So that's why I'm giving him $20, $30, $100 an hour, because he has this thing that I don't have. So that could be a factor as well. But, most of the 8-channel control surfaces are going to be just a Mackie control. So figure out which one you like the looks of, which one you like the feel of, if you have a chance to actually touch the faders, because that can make a big difference in how you approach things. So all right, so we see Sable Winters on the live stream. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, Sable. and is already granted black cherry ice cream by Michael Teams. Michael is on it. So we see Ted Springman just says, thanks, I'm trading in my old 2013 trash can for 2019 Intel 24-core Mac Pro, 192 gigs of RAM, stress tested, 800 instances of contact Spitfire samples at 35% CPU, but finally got it crashed at 900 instances. It should be enough, I think, probably. So, but it's great, and it's always exciting getting a new system. So congratulations on that. So we see just comment from Ted Springman, says, I'm still bummed that Reason can't rewire to Cubase. Yeah, so unfortunately Propellerheads decided to stop development of Rewire, so it's not going to be working with any, contemporary operating systems. So you could, you could express your frustration to Propellerheads. So. All right, so we just see, hi Greg, how can I make imported guitar or keyboard loops from the media browser to play at a predefined project key? So let's see if we could get that going. All right, so let me just come over here. I'll just grab. All right, so let's say we're kind of E flat. Let me just see if we can enable root key here. I may have to move it up. Okay, so let's say we're going to have a root key of D sharp, and let's say, okay, so we have or E flat. So let's say I want to go to guitar. So let's say we will do this Rhodes and so let's see if those play. If we set this to so as we do this, let's say if I just set this to G, let's see if that plays. I know I'm missing like one little click to enable this. Let me just. All right, I'm just going to move the root key up a little bit. All right, so let's say this was D sharp. And I think this was F originally, so let's just go ahead and listen to it. I know there's like a follow root key or something setting that I'm missing. So let me just see if I add a transpose track. Yeah, and I'm forgetting kind of and probably someone will mention in the comments where I'm kind of flaking on it, but let's just see. And it might be with specific content that's set up for it. Sorry for my brain cramp. I'll make a note to see if I get it figured out for Friday's live stream. Sorry about that. All right, we see Michael Teams is heading off to Dallas. Thanks for joining us and for your gifts of ice cream for attendees. Okay, so we just see a question. I was wondering if there's an automation editor, like a detachable window, like how the crossfade editor is. So there really isn't. So, the automation is going to be done on the main project window here. So, I think we've gotten this question the last few live streams. But if there's anything that what you're not able to necessarily edit here with the automation, but you could also use kind of the info line here for numeric data entry. But if you could let us know if there's a particular reason, like with the crossfade, you need to kind of edit the audio waveforms, but you don't necessarily need to see that with automation. Or, if you do, you could just enable, if you get to automation panel and go to settings, you can hit F6 to do that, and you can show the data on the tracks, and then you could see the waveform. But if there's a reason that you need to see the automation in a dedicated window, let me know. I can't think of an advantage off the top of my head of having it in a different window. All right, good to see Tim Weinheimer on the live stream. Glad you can make it. When Chatfield just jumped. Okay, so we see Nick saying note to self, must stop composing in 12.8, but great click options in Cubase. Yeah, if you want to get creative, you could do like a 5 plus 7, 8, and you know, so you could play with the click track options for, so you're not just doing, you know, groups of 3 or 2 groups of 6 or 3 groups of 4. All right, so we see, maybe this is Benny's question that we answered earlier, but my studio computer with PC with Win12, I have 1202, and Cubase 12 works 100%. On my other computer, 1203, where it messes up a bit. Is it necessary to update to 1203? So it isn't necessary to update. You know, you can if you want, but we don't force updates on people. So you could leave one at 1202, then one at 1203. You're not going to run into any problems with project compatibility or anything. All right, we see Jeff Sabelski is Smasher number 125. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, so we see from John Koskin, I have an updated song with VST instruments and effects, but I want to sneak in the old, very punchy cassette tracks. Does this call for tempo detect and musical mode treatment on it? So, yeah, it could. And, you know, I was just helping like a friend of mine I've known since I was in second grade, who's a Cubase user as well, a great drummer, Pat Terrell. But, you know, and if you have an audio file, you know, that, and he would just had like a cassette recording and he was transferring it over and realized that the belts had stretched on his cassette deck and was all playing slow. So, which could be typical these days for, you know, not everyone is getting their cassette decks set up correctly. But let me just see if I have. But if you find that the cassette deck isn't, you know, matching or speeding up, you know, you could definitely, like I'll just take, you know, and this is when like the tape machine algorithm is handy. So, you know, if you just choose, and I'll just, so if you find that, you know, your tape isn't at speed, you know, just come over here to Elastic Pro Tape. And then as we would play back the file and we adjust our tempo and we have this in musical mode, that now if the tape is playing too fast, you could slow the tempo down, or if it's playing too slow, this would speed up the pitch, kind of like almost like a vary speed on a cassette recorder or a vary speed on a multi-track tape machine. So it changes the pitch and the length at the same time. So that way you could just adjust a tempo and just like, think of that as like a very speed control on an analog deck. All right, so we have a question, how to change the name of the project after you save it. So just go to File, Save As. So if I want to call this Tempo Detect Jazz, I could call it Tempo Detect Jazz 3, or just kind of rename. So just do a Save As, and that will give you a new particular file. All right, so just see from Michael Marshall, did you get my email with the Cubase Pro and UR12 ASIO problem? Let me just see if I could, I remember getting it, so sorry if I forgot to address it. Let me just see if I could find it quickly here off the top of my head. Or if you want to resend it to me now, I could probably get to it before the end of the seminar today. So sorry about that. I kind of half remember it, and I don't want to screw it up. Sorry about that. All right, so with Michael Marshall just saying can't get the so I think I remember now. So you're saying you just can't get it to see the UR12. So if it's not, so generally, the interfaces, as soon as they are connected, so it may be like when you go to the studio setup that, so generally it should be, listed here. I remember if there was screenshots or a video that it didn't seem like it was listed, but it was working, I think, in standard Windows, maybe like a standard operating system. So if that's the case, make sure that it was the ASIO driver that was installed, because there could be two different drivers installed, one for ASIO and one for utilizing one for ASIO, which what Cubase would use, and one for like the operating system, which is what Windows would use for that. But I'll look it up again just to make sure. See, sorry about that. And one thing to check also, on the back of the UR12, you could power it via, one thing to check. And I know you said, if I remember from the email, that it was kind of connected to the OS, but make sure, there is a little switch on the back of the UR12 that can have it work as a class compliant mode for working with, and that could be working with like iOS devices and just like a class compliant MIDI driver. And there's a switch where you could turn that off, and it might be the power switch. So try, powering it off of USB and see if that makes a difference, Michael. All right, so we see how to set RMS metering on each track. Is it possible? So, so say as we look at kind of our so this meter doesn't really change, but you could kind of see. We'll just go to a different project just to show a little more meter activity. And we'll just say if we come here to the fader, so we can kind of see, so this metering isn't adjusted, so we could see the peak, and but there's not much of an RMS indication, so we could see kind of what the peak level is there. But if we go to the control room, if you wanted to just set your control room here, and let's say we have the meters. And let's say you want to have your different metering scales and solo, you could just, solo meters there as well and see it directly in the particular channel if you wanted to. But this is kind of a fixed meter. All right, we see Jeff Sabelski is loving his Nuendo, even though he has Cubase 11 Pro. So, all right, so just reading through comments here. All right, so we see question. Hi, Greg. What is the reason when I click Mapping Assistant in Midi Remote doesn't show? Thanks. So let's say if I'm in my Midi Remote here, so if it's like when you double click on an event that the Midi mapping doesn't show up. So I think that came in like 1201 or 1202 as a function. So, but let me. So, and also if you're clicking the Midi mapping from here, so you could also access it directly from here, but you might want to, specify what controller it is that you have. So if you could let me know where you're clicking on the Midi mapping, but with I think 1201 or 1202, you can now just double click to assign a particular function by clicking on the object directly in the Midi remote. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. See, Jeff Sabelski just mentioning, did my son know how close to Disneyland I was? So, yeah, Anaheim is actually my hometown, so I was born there, so just a couple miles away. So, but I had to look for a stuffed cat for him. So, So we see from Volker just saying, Cubase is too much information. Sometimes my brain explodes. Oh my God. So no, you don't have to use all of the features. You just use what features you need. So. All right, so we have Mitch Michelle checking in from Michigan. Thanks for joining us today. So we see Ted Springman just saying Reason Rack plugin for Cubase 12. Cool, I'll test that out. So yeah, so basically with I think the last major rev of Reason, they finally decided that it made sense to operate as a plugin. So so that way you could save your Cubase or Nuendo project, and all the settings will be automatically recalled without having to open up the same project on a different program. All right, so so we see a question, what drum plugin would you recommend for classic synth drums in place of Groove Agent? So if you wanted to do a lot of kind of like drum synthesis, check out Backbone. It's pretty hard to beat. So if you just kind of come over here and go to Backbone, and this is kind of like drum sampling synthesis all in one. But definitely check out Backbone, and you could do all sorts of amazing kind of, not only for drum synthesis but sound design work directly there as well. So check out Backbone if you're looking for like a different tool that's not as sample based. We appreciate Jazz Dude for his vigilant moderation as well. Yeah, we see Jeff Sabelski just saying he graduated from Estancia High in Costa Mesa. So yeah, I moved when I was 1, so I don't have much memories or a longing for Anaheim other than my, the Yamaha office being close to there and always being in town for the NAMM show. All right, so let me go. So some other questions. So with Backbone, I see a question: can Backbone work with full kits or different drums or just single sounds? So you could have, I think, 8 different sounds, kind of going at once with that. So, but you could obviously run multiple instances of it. All right, so let's see. I think I'm caught up to questions. Let me go ahead and. We had some more questions that were mailed in. So let me jump to those. All right, so we just see question. Hi, Club Cubase. I just watched one of your videos and I like to submit a topic/question. I've attempted to load numerous drum kits into a track in my Cubase project. I can see the patterns and instruments, but when I hit the pads or press play on patterns, there's no sound. The input is mapped to all MIDI devices, and the output is mapped to the same output as my project. I'm using styles rather than MIDI as I don't have a separate drum machine. I've also downloaded the additional content for Groove Agent from the Steinberg website, and that's made no difference. I can't see any additional content in the Groove Agent folder. Any help appreciated. I will try to listen to the next stream if you can cover it off then. So, make sure, one of the things that you do is, instead of downloading the content that, you should only really kind of get the content that you have the licenses for, but come over to the Steinberg Library Manager and go to Groove Agent and make sure that you see some of these are add-ons, but you should see like the Kit SE. I think, you should see a number of these different kits available here. If you don't see these particular, any sounds, and this is just a separate program called the Steinberg Library Manager. And this basically just links the content where it's stored on your hard drive to content to the program or to a particular instrument. So if it is the content for the Grand, for Pad Shop, for Retrolog, for Backbone, etc., all these content we can link. So if you know where the .vst sound file is, one is, often people will download Groove Agent and not download the content with it. So make sure that you've done that. And it sounds like maybe you've done this if you've already downloaded other kits. Now, if you download other kits, they're not going to show up because you don't have unless you've purchased a license for it. So they won't show up until then. But let's say if you go to, your, let's say we go to your Cubase. So go to find your Cubase version here. So let's say Cubase 12. And then at this point, we could see that you could have the Groove Agent instrument. So some people install this, but not the Groove Agent SE content. So if you could make sure you've installed that content there. And at that point, you could, wherever the download location is, it should put it into kind of a, basically a common folder. And then what you want to do is you could, if you know where that .vst sound file is, you could just double click on it. And then that will register where that content is, and it says, okay, that's a Groove Agent kit. So next time you start, it should find that particular content. But make sure that you've downloaded that content and that, you just double click on it or right click and open in Steinberg Library Manager. And that will make the link between the content to the particular instrument. All right, and we had a question. Hi, Greg. The marker track is not completely fixed. There's still an issue about the marker track in Cubase 1203. When creating a marker in Cubase 11, the marker showed us as default an ID number. The number ID is not visible in Cubase 12. Creating a marker for Cubase 12 only shows the icon with no ID number. You always have to add the description yourself to a digit or description else. Is it an anonym icon or anonymous icon maybe? Okay, so when we do this, like let's say we have a project and we have a marker track. So let's just go ahead and drop some markers in. And I'll zoom out. So when we do this, we could just drop markers in, right? And we notice that it's just going to be almost like a little flag. Okay, but when we go to the markers here, go to settings. So, and this is different than previous versions. Now you could show the marker IDs, cycle follows when locating the markers, and also sync selection. And now that you've done that, all of the markers, as we drop them in, will automatically get the IDs. So we'll come over here, and as we play, we'll just drop the markers, and we see the ID automatically being added. So as we work with this, we can now see our marker IDs, and if I just click on the marker here, it will just automatically, with the sync selection, navigate to that particular marker as well. All right, let's go back to some of our live questions. right, just reading through comments. Okay, just reading through comments, we see that Ted Springman once sold his only car for an interface and got an electric bike for work. That's dedication. All right. All right, so we see Thermonuclear War on the live stream, and Gerald Ely as well. Thanks for joining. All right. All right. So this is clarification about the mapping assistant. Try many times clicking mapping assistant, but does not respond. Show or enter mapping assistant. So let me know if you're, you could enter the mapping assistant from here, this icon in the upper right hand corner, or directly once you're, so let's say if we go to our mapping assistant here, once we have a mapping assistant open here, we could just say, okay, let's select. And so once we have, like, we're in the surface area here, we could go to the mapping assistant. Check also, just out of curiosity, if maybe you have other windows that are in front. It looks like it kind of pops. You could see if the mapping assistant window maybe is underneath other windows. But maybe it's underneath another window. But it seems like it's always opened up for me, either when we're in our MIDI controller area or from the upper right hand corner, you could access it. So, but see if maybe you have 4 windows on top of it or something. But it looks like it kind of jumps to be on top. Just seeing reminiscence of working at top studios in the 80s, with hugely expensive mixers and see the charge, jazz dude just kind of reminiscing about $1,000 per day to do it. So yeah, that was just to cover the electricity. So, but yeah, I can always remember kind of an artist writing lyrics costing him $670 an hour on day 2. When I was an assistant in New York at a big studio, so it was kind of funny. All right. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. I'm going to see if I just got the email again from, I'll look to see if we get it. Okay, so the Michael Marshall email, so just so I'm trying to set up an old friend's computer to run Cubase Pro 12 and Windows 11 laptop. The program can't find Cubase to recognize the UR12 adapter. Although we haven't installed the latest drivers, download them from Steinberg. All that appears in Cubase connections. Windows, the machine's Realtek sound card. I tried disabling the device to no avail. Outside of Cubase window recognizes the device with its correct device name and sample rate and its UR12 control panel and plays through UR12 with no problems. To compound the problem, my friend is currently recovering from some health issues. So, try the, try to make sure that the little switch, like for the power on the back, is not set to 5 volts. So it's like one of those dumb things that, it could throw off the whole thing. So it may be recognized by Windows, but maybe it's not getting enough power over the US, over the USB connection, if it's looking to get powered externally. So check that and let me know. And we'll see if there's other questions. If not, we could wrap up a little early. All right, so we see, is CC 121 still available? So the CC 121 was discontinued last year. There's some dealers still get some little, sprinklings of inventory, but it's been discontinued. So for parts availability issues. All right, so I see a question. Have you ever used Mimo Live for streaming? So I haven't. So what I use for streaming is just going to be, I use OBS as a software, and I take my audio out of, I connect audio from a microphone and audio from my Cubase audio interface into a Yamaha digital mixer, and I use that so I could mute when necessary. Okay, so you see, what's the question? What's the easiest way to take a capture of the master bus for resampling? I'm trying to add a pitch bend at the end of a build in a song. All right, so let's say we want to do this. Okay, so I want to take, we'll go to my mix console here. So let's say I'll just do a mix down, and I'll just do just a portion of the song here to say time. And I'm just going to import this. It says after export, I'm just going to say create audio track. And we'll export audio. So now we can just take this particular file. And even if you wanted to drag this into your sampler track, there's a number of different ways to do your pitch. So you could just export it right in or do a render in place. And now at this point, we can say, okay, let's just go to our sampler control. And I'll drag this right down. And you could now just kind of draw in and play a pitch bend with this in real time. So let's say while we're playing. So if I just wanted to. So you could set your pitch bend range here. So let's say, set it to an octave. So as we would play. So if you even wanted to just draw a pitch bend in, you could do that easily enough. So say, okay, we'll just. So you could just, export the file, and then if you wanted to just draw in pitch bend, or you could right click on, you could select the file, go to audio, to processes, and here you could do just a pitch shift as well if you wanted to. So you could just say, I want to do my pitch shift down. I want the range to be set to 12 or 13, whatever. And now that will just automatically pitch shift that particular audio file down. So I'll just go ahead and remove that. So there's a couple different ways. So just export the file, then you can manipulate it a number of different ways without issue. And to see a further question, I'm assuming the sampler track would give me pitch bend. So yeah, just like we showed you. All right, so we see Best Korean Jesus on. So thanks for joining today. All right, so we see Benny saying the Icon Pro G2 is on the way. Enjoy your new piece of equipment. So we're just saying I could probably get you an NFR license. Yeah, if there's like other streaming software, I'd be interested in checking it out. So if it's cross-platform, it's always helpful, but yeah. All right, we see Michael Pierce has to dash. So thanks for joining us today. Hope you're doing well, and look forward to hearing your live stream, even if the video didn't work as well. All right, so I'm at the end of the questions. We'll see if there's any more. If not, we could wrap up a little early. I thank everyone for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. You can be notified, and we'll be doing the next live stream starting on, it'll be on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. So I think that's 7 p.m. Central European time, 6 p.m. UK time. So, okay, so you see the Mimo Live is only for Mac OS. I generally use Mac OS for all the live streams, but I'd be interested to check it out. Thanks, appreciate that. All right, we see. All right, so we'll give it another 30 seconds or so, then we could wrap. All right, so with that, I guess we've reached the end of questions. Let's go ahead and we'll end for, I see Nick is kind enough to grant me a mocha, so that was very kind. I was thinking of one. All right, but... All right, so just see, how do I route the audio from Cubase to the streaming software to use the control room feature? So really what I do is I just take the analog outputs into, I have one audio interface for Cubase and one mixer for the stream. So if I have to cough, or, my son knocks on the door, I could hit the mute button on the mixer. So that's how I kind of use it. I use kind of two different audio interfaces. Okay, so with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. So thank you for all the great questions, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday.